Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Happy Easter if you celebrate. Super excited to be having Mix It Up with ML number 6 with my great friend, Chelsie. I'm very excited for every podcast, but I'm not going to lie, guys. This one has got me super juiced up. Chelsie is a star. So super happy to have you on, Chelsie. So thanks for joining us.
Yay, yeah, I'm happy to be here, Mike. Thanks for inviting me. I was very shocked.
Nah, Chelsie is self-deprecating as always. But we're gonna get into it, Chelsie. I have a lot to ask you. Super excited about it.
Oh, I'm scared.
And so, no. I like to start it just as like context for the listeners. If you want to
Yeah,
just introduce yourself and then how we met, and we can go from there.
absolutely. So yeah, I'm Chelsea, NYC native. And in terms of how I know Mike, I definitely recall hearing like Lotito, the name Lotito, freshman year, and not knowing what that meant. And then I remember also seeing in the halls of Butler, which was our residential college on
Oh,
campus.
Chelsie, I
Very,
didn't even know you were in Butler.
it's
I'm so
okay.
ashamed to know that now without knowing it before.
No, well, I didn't really know who you were, but I remember seeing this super tall kid, like tall for no reason, who's bald.
No
And
reason.
then I put two and two together and I was like, oh, okay, that's the Latino guy. But I don't think we formally met until my until senior year, honestly.
Hey,
Like, yeah, which is unfortunate because I feel like senior spring would have been wild.
wild.
But things happen. So that's
Yes.
probably I think that's how I know you. Like that's literally it. It just jumped.
Right. Yeah. And we met through our boy Jay Salit. I don't
Yeah.
know if Jay Salit's listening to the podcast. Nobody knows what Jay Salit's up to ever. Nobody knows what he's doing, but I'll shout him out.
Yeah.
Jay Salit. Yeah, no. So we met at like a formal event. I feel like it was like was it a dance? Was it a like
Probably a cap, right?
holiday event at CAP or something like
Yeah,
that? So that
yeah.
was super fun. And then Chelsea, what dorm were you in Butler freshman year? How did I not know this?
Oh, freshman year, I was in what other I've like forgotten everything already, but I was in Yozloff freshman year.
Okay. So you
Yozloff,
were
and
living
then
good.
oh yeah, too good.
You were living good, and I was suffering
Yeah.
over there in 1915 with my homeboys.
Oh, you were one of
1915.
the monastery boys.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Look at this. We learned something about each other on the pod. I love it. I love it. Well, great. Well, Chelsea, again, super stoked to have you on. I have a lot of fun things that I'd like to ask you about. So
Yeah,
I'm ready to get into it when you are. You want to do
let's
it?
go.
All right. First thing, your full-time job that you're working on right now
Yeah. Yeah.
at Kobre and Kim. Is
Yeah,
that the way
Kobre
to
and Kim. Yeah.
Kobre and Kim?
Yeah.
All right. So for somebody who's a novice in the law world, legal analyst world,
Yeah.
myself, I'm a novice. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Tell us the listeners,
Yeah.
what got you into that? I saw you have some experience working like a lot of international stuff, a lot of grants, policy stuff. I saw you had like international relations concentration at
Yeah.
Princeton. So can you tell us, the backstory of how you got to Cobra and Kim?
Yeah, I'm so flattered. Mike did such detailed research on me
I
right
got to do
now.
my homework for the podcast,
Yeah.
guys.
But so Kobre and Kim is a law firm. It's an international law firm that focuses primarily on like white collar crime and financial litigation. If you asked me a year ago what any of that stuff meant, I could not tell you. Which leads me to how I ended up at this firm. I think as a politics major in undergrad, the next step is like I think a lot of people naturally think the next step is law school.
Mm,
So throughout undergrad, I'd ask my professors from all my politics classes and also like other lawyers I'd met either through my internships or just like wherever. I'm like, okay, so what's the deal with law school? Should I go? Like, what do you think? Give me advice.
okay.
And 9 times out of 10, people will tell you not to go to law school. So I was like, oh,
Really?
okay, that's a fun, yeah. No, it's primarily the response I've gotten from everyone asked. They're like, don't do it. Like they advise against it. So when thinking about what to do for post grad and like working and stuff, I was like, I'm not ready to apply back into school. I definitely knew I wanted to have some professional working experience. And I saw this opportunity with Kobre and Kim, which has an analyst program that I'm a part of.
Hmm.
And that's very unique for law firms. Like there's never an analyst program for fresh out of college post grads. It's usually
Okay.
like a paralegal program, which I is a little more administrative. That's what you usually find. So this program gives you the experience working directly with the lawyers and attorneys on their cases. And I was like,
Mm,
okay, if I do this, I can figure out if I like this before I put down $100 gajillion and getting a degree and realizing at the end of it that I don't even want to do it.
Mhm.
And so luckily I got this analyst program, and that's kind of how I like fell into this. I had no idea what being a lawyer meant, what going into law meant. Like I had no idea. I was just like, let's try it out and see if I like it. So
Right,
that's how I
right.
ended up here.
I love that. And I'm actually pretty surprised about 9 out of 10 people saying not to go to law school. On the one hand, I'm surprised. But on the other hand, and connecting this with medicine, they call it
Oh,
sort of the big squeeze, where like it costs more and more to go into medicine and law now in terms of like loans and
yep,
tuition and all that.
yep,
But basically incomes have not increased as much as you would have thought. Like back in the 80s or 90s, it was super lucrative to go into
yeah,
medicine and law. And so incomes haven't quite gone up the way you would expect. And then tuition
right.
rises. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's also the legal field I think is oversaturated right now, apparently. Like
Okay.
from the research I've done, it's just like there are way too many lawyers and not enough basically cases for them. And I think also a lot of people go into law school not knowing like with there are two branches. There are people who go in with like very noble purposes, right? But then at the end of the day, you're stuck in debt, and the jobs that are going to get you out of debt are the ones that you're probably not as passionate about, and there's a lot of burnout very late in the stage,
Mm,
right? And then by the end of your like tenure as a lawyer, you're kind of like pooped, alcoholic, depressed. So
right. Right.
and then on the other hand, there are people who go in not really knowing what it means, and you're just kind of swept up in it, and you're in it. You do it for a few years, and yeah, and just ends up being your career. So I guess I was trying to figure. I would be one of those people if I applied to law school of like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm glad I'm getting this experience beforehand
Right.
before
And that's
deciding
what
on that.
Right. And that's what I was just going to ask you is, have you been reflecting on that this year, or you've just kind of been taking the year to just like get your feet under you? That's totally,
Yeah,
understandable. But have you been reflecting on law school at all?
that is a very good question. And I definitely think because of the pandemic, I've been working remotely fully this past like 8, 9 months.
Same
So I
here.
haven't even been, yeah, right. So I haven't even been in the office, which leads to a lot of reflection because you only have the work in front of you, right? Like
Mhm.
there's nothing else to distract you, no work happy hours, no like, you know, the environment's not there. So you're just stuck with what you're doing. And it's definitely helped me figure out that I probably do not want to become a lawyer.
Wow.
And that's been like a very good experience to like figure out because I feel like knocking stuff out is a lot easier than figuring out like the one thing you want to do. So there's like that huge sense of relief of like, okay, wow, I know I don't really want to do this, and there's a power in that. But now the obvious next question is, so what are you gonna do with your life?
Right.
And we're
Right.
just gonna be back on on the road of like crossing stuff out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really respect that. And I think it's one of those cliches that's a cliche for a reason, right? And
Yeah.
something that you have to internalize by
Oh
actually
yeah.
experiencing it yourself.
Yeah.
Um, which I think in your case, right, is the cliche being, oh, like if you don't want to do something, you like figuring that out is a good thing. It's not a waste of time,
Yeah. Yeah.
etc. Like all that cliche. But I think it really is a cliche for a reason because you're able to, like you said, process of elimination, sort of live your
Yeah.
life that way as like
It's fun.
a bit more focused way of
Yeah.
going about, okay, maybe not this, let's try the next thing. So
Yeah.
again, cliche, but I really respect you for doing that
Yeah.
because it takes a lot of work to internalize that. Might not have been the
Oh man.
easiest thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it was hard for you or you were expecting like, oh, be super passionate about law school. Maybe not,
Yeah.
but
No, I think that was the hardest part. Like the first few months, me having those feelings kind of come up at first and being like, there's a paralysis because it's like, if not this, then what am I gonna do? Like, why
mhm,
don't I like this? Like, then trying to force yourself to like something that you're just not passionate about.
right.
Um, and then I don't know, when you talk to people, I've been watching like a lot of just like YouTube these days, just seeing what other people are doing out in life, like
Yeah.
seeing that you have this podcast. I'm like, there's so much out there. Like you can like things will happen, things will do fine. And we're lucky with like the education backgrounds we've had. So that I
Mhm.
can feel like a little less like pressured to do something. Like I'm not that worried.
Yeah.
As worried as maybe other people who would be in a similar boat, right? So
Right. Right. No, I totally agree. Yeah, it takes time to figure out what you want to do. I know my sister actually has like, and I just really respect this, right? Because she's been kind of hopping around different fields. Like she was thinking like all different kinds of things, studied
Yeah.
history in undergrad, and is now doing like graphic design consulting,
Oh,
actually.
whoa. Okay, that's
Um,
lit.
yeah, and like she's like over 30 now, maybe 30-ish. I don't want to get too high on the age, 30-ish, 31. Least please don't kill me if I got that age wrong. But yeah, I think it takes a little time, but also I think in our generation or at these
Mm,
times that we're
yeah.
growing up in, I think there's just this like kind of insane pressure to think that you need to know it right away when
Right.
actually like I've been watching Shark Tank. I like just
Oh,
binging Shark
what?
Tank. And one of these like guest sharks came on. I don't know if it was Bethany Frankel, maybe her name is, I'm not sure, but she was like, yeah, like I was broke at age 32 and 33,
Ooh.
and now she's this huge multimillionaire at
Woo.
whatever 40 plus. So it's like
Yeah.
recognizing that everything is not so immediate and it could just
Yeah.
take a little bit of time, and like we're only 22, 23,
Literally. Yep.
and just like slowing it down a little bit. I don't know
Yeah.
if you feel that, but
No,
it's not that
yeah.
intuitive to like we're not built, it's not built into our brains to be like, oh, it's fine, you're 22. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you need this right now, you know.
Right. I mean, it's the way we've kind of you go to school, you do high school, college. After college, you're expected to have the job, and then you got Forbes 30 under 30 out there, and you got like the
Yeah.
pressure is there. And I think I'm also coming to terms with like the fact that we are literally 23 in the eyes of our parents. We are like we are actual babies.
Right.
We have so much left to live later on. I guess
Hmm.
trying to internalize the fact that like your 20s are not the only time you're going to be living your life. Like we're going to keep living like well into our 30s and 40s and 50s. Like there's
Yeah.
more of life to be lived. So I have to internalize that still, but yeah, I think you articulated it really well.
Yeah. And I think I was talking with Sarah the other day. She was saying that there's also this sort of pressure, and it goes along with this, but it's a little bit of a different take on or spin, is like we feel that we need to live at least as well as our parents did or better, sort of
Yeah.
like right away. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that that might be new to our generation, and it's part of that instant gratification thing. Like we're talking
Yeah.
about YouTube, right? On YouTube, you see these things that are like all caps, like get a six pack in 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Like do these
Yeah.
two exercises. And I think in our culture, at least right now, it just feels everything's so instant.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a lie. And I feel that, you know, this one saying was like, let the time do the work for you. And I thought that
Ooh.
that's like pretty powerful, right? Like
Yeah.
time being an actual force that can do
Work with you.
legitimate work
Yeah.
for you and with you. And I think, I don't know, I'm on a
Ooh.
philosophical spiel here,
Let's go.
but
No, I like it.
like,
I like it. I think we're at
yeah,
that point. The pandemic gives us a lot of time to just think about like why we're here, why we do
existential
half of what we
crisis.
do. Oh my God, it's so real. Like I don't know about you, but it was recently like your birthday was just a day or two ago, right? And so like the fact that a year has gone by
Oh my
in this
God.
weird like stasis, like it hit me. I was like 22. When I turned 22, the next day was when we got our eviction notice from campus.
Wow.
Like that was
Eviction.
my
Boom.
birthday. Yeah, and so that is like that's my time marker now. Like, oh my God,
Hmm.
this next year has been just exactly 1 year since that has happened. What has
Right.
changed? We've changed a lot though, I feel like. I mean, we
Yeah.
have our degrees and you're just like going all around the country with Sarah. And
Yeah.
things have changed a lot, but also some things have we just stayed in place. And I think that breeds a lot of thinking. Like, what is your purpose? What are you here for? Do you need to have a
Yeah.
purpose? Very
Absolutely.
philosophical.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, yeah. What have been some of the things that you've been reflecting on, or the ways that you feel that
Yeah.
you've changed, I guess, over the year?
Yeah. Oh, how have I changed? I feel like to assess that, I would need to be back in environments that we used to be in pre-pandemic.
Ooh, okay.
So I don't know how much I've changed. What has changed? I mean, obviously I've started my first full-time job ever, and I think the hardest thing about that was just changing from the mindset of like a student at a research institution into like a oh, I have to work. Like it's not like I can't skip lecture because I don't feel like going to class that day. Like I need to
Yes.
be there and I have to 5 days a week, like 8 to 6, 7, like
Mm,
that's work. And that was really hard.
right.
And I
Can you
think
talk a little bit more about that for our listeners?
oh my gosh, absolutely. This
Yeah.
was so rough. I think um maybe being in the pandemic has also exacerbated these feelings, but I really miss being a student, and now I understand why people say they miss college, even knowing how stressful college is.
Yeah.
Work stress is a whole different kind of beast.
Like,
Honestly, I think it's like the environment itself is very different. I think in college you don't really have much of a hierarchy. Even
mm,
with your professors, you go to their office hours, you talk to them about the work, you're kind of mulling over ideas and concepts together in class.
mhm,
So there's like a level playing field in that sense, and you're in class with freshmen and seniors, so it's a very equalizing playing field, I think.
right.
Being on a college campus, work now, getting used to being like at the bottom of the totem pole, getting used to being like you have to watch how you speak to people, at least especially in the corporate environment I'm in now. Like it's very
Mm,
different. And they're just like it's a new set of rules and a new jungle gym, right? Like you have to manage relationships a little differently. The expectations placed on you are very different.
right.
I think in college you're kind of responsible for your work and what you want to get out of the experience.
Mhm,
In the workplace, you're part of a whole entire system. And if one ball gets dropped and you're responsible for that ball getting dropped, you're
yeah.
affecting so many other people. And that kind of weight, like I guess, or pressure every day with every assignment you get is a little draining, I think. And it was a stark transition, I think. So yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head of what's felt different about it for me, at
Yeah.
least is right. Like my sister told me when you went to college, oh, like this is a great time because, like you just said, you're taking care of yourself. Like you go
Yeah.
to class, you're studying for yourself. Like
Yeah.
then you go to the gym. Like if you go to the gym or whatever you're doing, you're like doing it for yourself. And
Yeah.
like it's just like a lot of like
It's all you.
it's me centric, and that's
Yeah.
like pretty cool in some ways. You're kind of like working on your craft. That's nice and everything,
Yeah.
and you're trying to figure yourself out. It's a beautiful time.
Mm.
Um, but now I see why she was like enjoy that, because I think it's the stress might be just like being dependent upon by other people. Like you're not just
Yeah.
responsible for yourself. You have to
Yeah.
meet deadlines in a way that like the deadline is not just getting it in, like getting the paper in, but it's like
Yeah.
so that the boss can read your work and then they can proceed
Decisions
with
can
it.
get made. Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think there's some sort of stress to that, I try not to be like always looking back on things that I've accomplished and be like, oh, like college was so easy now. Because it wasn't
Yeah.
for me. College was like brutal for me.
No,
Um,
it was not easy.
yeah. But each stage kind of has those different challenges and different
Yeah.
contexts. I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel what I'm saying, but
No, I get that. I think I was kind of mourning the loss of college, honestly, when
yeah.
starting my job and realizing like, oh, this is like my life now. I fought very hard in my room, in my home office. I fought very hard to be like, no, I'm still a student. Like, I this is not what I should be doing. This is not what I know. And honestly, we don't really know how to be working people. We've been in school for the last like
Hmm.
20 years. And so getting thrown into that was like so jarring. I don't think there's anything to prepare you for that, honestly. And
Yeah.
I was fighting really hard. I was like, no, this is not me. I'm not prepared to be this like working cog in the machine, right? But
Right.
it kind of settles on you a little later, and it's like, okay, this is a new chapter of life that I have to accept.
Right.
Um, and that's hard. That is kind of hard.
It's definitely hard. It's definitely
Yeah.
hard. And one of the things you mentioned, I just wanted to touch on because it
Yeah.
just was interesting to me. You said in the corporate world, like
Yeah.
language is super important. Could you tell
Yeah.
me about that?
Yeah.
Because I work in like the nonprofit world, so it's definitely like a different like
Vibe.
arena, definitely a
Yeah.
different vibe. And like, because I've heard people talk about this corporate aspect, and I heard you mention it, so I want to see if you could expand on that.
Yeah.
The
It's
sigh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know how to explain it. I guess
Okay.
it's just as a 22, 23-year-old, I'm 23 now, I have to remember that. As a 23-year-old, um, coming into this environment, I guess the respect culture in the corporate environment is mostly based on how much experience you've had in the
Mm,
field. Um, I'm working with lawyers and attorneys who are trained in the legal profession. So like
mhm,
they automatically know way more than me. And I think there's this I don't know, there's just like this idea in many corporate environments, not just law firms, but also banks and wherever else there are corporate environments, business places, where you're just you want to build really great relationships with those above you while also respecting their time, respecting the wealth of knowledge that they have. And so that kind of already creates like that imbalance and dynamic, right? Where it's like,
Mm,
you have more to give to me maybe than I might have to give to you.
mm,
Um, Although the relationship should work both ways, there are many ways in which this person above you can like give you opportunities that you definitely can't get on your own.
right.
And I think that balance kind of forces this culture of respectability that's a little that's very different from what we're used to in college. So
Yeah,
I guess that's the best way I can explain it. It's really
right.
hard. Yeah.
No, I definitely resonate with that. And even though I'm in this different sector,
I think same thing.
because
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm actually in a 1 year position, which is also
Mm.
because of the gap year
Yeah, yeah.
thing that like it's this Princeton like Project 55 fellowship
Oh,
thing.
P55. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like really nice because they let me stay only for 1 year, which is really a detriment, I feel like, to a lot of the like nonprofits and stuff. And I felt really bad about it, but they're like, no, it's okay. Like you're doing great work. But right, because it's like they train you and then you kind of like get your feet under you. And I feel really
Yeah.
solid in it now, but I only have a few months more. But anyway, what I was saying was like I'm in this 1 year position and my bosses are both like, 33, 34, 35-ish, I think.
Yeah.
Like again, up there. I'm putting my foot in my mouth today, but I'm pretty sure they're in that range, right?
Yeah.
And so, right, like I'm 23, and it's like we're a very small team, so they have all this experience, and I feel like I wanted to ask you what some of your tips were for creating those relationships in a positive way
Yeah.
and learning from them.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like managing up in a way type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like for me, I just try to really like I kind of like I send messages the way I talk, and my bosses don't do that. Like they're
Yeah.
very like okay, like no problem, or like
Right.
good, because
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
established. But for me, I'm like hi, like super sorry to bother you, like can you help me with this thing, or like I just
Yeah.
try to be super polite and everything, and I think it's
Yep.
good. It's a good thing to
That's
do that
good.
early on.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like language is something I focus on a lot to try to navigate that. I don't know if you have any of those similar experiences or
Uh,
not, but
yeah, I do think um the way you talk to people at work is very different than the way you talk with your friends. And I'm also super cognizant of like how many exclamation points am I using? I'm a
oh
very
yeah.
bright person naturally, and I don't like sending messages that are like, please do this thing or like check that. I'm very bad at it. And it's something I've had to learn like while at the law firm, because sometimes they're just like, just tell me what I gotta do and let's get it done. Like
Right.
don't need any of the fluff. And I have to also get used to reading those things as like, no, they're just telling me to get stuff done. This is not like them speaking to me sternly or like anything like that.
Hmm.
It's hard. I think any kind of technological communication is very difficult. I hate communicating through email, message. I hate it. Like
Hmm.
this
Way
way, I
better.
prefer this way better. So things can just get lost in translation, and language is very important. So
Hmm.
I think being overly polite though is always the best way to go about it. So that's
As
my
noobs
advice.
and novices, I think
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing for
Yeah.
now. And maybe, I don't ever want to get to the point where I'm super like short with my responses and everything because I'm sort of like one of those people. But I think at some point when you get older, you have more people coming to you and you just got it's
Yeah.
again, it's not rude. It's just like kind of the way it
The
is.
point. Yeah, yeah. Just want
Right.
to get stuff done and
Yeah.
just get the point across. So yeah.
Yeah, totally feel that. Totally feel that. I had something on my head I was gonna
Hmm.
say, and I forgot it. Maybe it'll come back in a
Okay.
second. We'll see. We'll wait for it to come back.
Okay.
Classic brain freeze on the pod. We'll see if it comes back.
No
Um,
worries.
got it. So, oh yes, this is what it was. This is what
Oh,
it
yay.
was. There we go. Listeners are bearing with me. Chelsea, what do you think about the future of remote work?
Oh.
Because the reason why this came to my head
Mhm.
was because you mentioned the importance of language and like being and like talking to people as opposed to virtual communication, right? And I
Yeah.
saw, I'm on Twitter, just like lurking on Twitter, and I saw
Yeah.
like somebody was saying, oh, it's like absurd that before in the before times it was required to like go to a physical place and like do work on a laptop. Again, this is white collar jobs, not blue collar
Yeah,
jobs,
yeah, yeah.
or like working in a restaurant or something, like more
Right.
desk jobs.
Yep.
Which was an assumption the tweeter made, I guess. But
Yeah.
they're like, it's like ridiculous that we had to go to a place and type on the laptop when we can just do it from anywhere we want.
Right.
And to some extent, I sympathize with that because I'm like, yeah, like I'd rather like spend my morning doing something else than commuting for 40
Yeah,
minutes or 30 minutes. And then your afternoon, right? It seems pretty nice to cut out the commute.
yeah,
Um, but also not being able to like lean over and just say something to your person who you're working next to. And like,
yeah,
I don't know if your firm has any like policies about going back and whatnot.
yeah.
But I just thought this would be an interesting reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think being remote has as many pros and cons as going into the office does. My firm, I'm not sure when we're gonna go back in. I think they might be optimistically aiming for like summer by the summertime. So that would be cool. I think especially starting a job, I think it's important to have that in-person aspect to just
Yeah.
figure out like, if I have this one question about something I want to lean over or just building that workplace camaraderie.
Mm,
But I can't say I don't I miss the commute, not gonna lie.
right.
I just for some background, I'm from Queens. I went to school in Manhattan for middle school and high school. It took me 2 hours to go one way.
Oh, I remember you told me this at
Yeah.
Princeton one time. We were eating in a
Yeah, yeah,
dining
what were
hall.
you getting? Whitman,
I
probably.
was like 2 hours.
Yeah, which is crazy to think now, but that was like my life back then. And that's time. And I'm learning more and more as we get older. Time is money, or actually
Mm,
money can't even buy you time, right? No matter how much money
mm,
you make, time
mm.
is so precious. And while being in person, I think does have those pros of just like I'm a people person. I'm more
Same,
extroverted than
same.
introverted. Like I would appreciate that. I also do appreciate the ability to like not have to worry about commuting as
Right.
well. But on the flip side, I think the problem with being remote is the blurred lines between work life and home life.
Mm,
Like I'm
mm,
afraid if I go back, like now that my firm has kind of perfected this remote working technology,
mm.
after the technical close of business, if I'm in the office, can should I would I be expected to like log back on at home because I know you can do that now and like
Mhm.
complete these tasks? Like, does the workday ever end? I personally
Yeah.
need an end to my workday. So like,
I don't know about y'all, but I do
yeah,
too.
but
Yeah.
so those are the kinds of things I'm trying to like like I still don't know the answer to, and I don't think we will until everyone's back in the office.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little scared for how that transition might work and how we might go back to respecting like your employees' time,
Yeah.
even though we figured out a way in these desk
Mm.
jobs to work remotely.
Right.
So,
And I was going to ask you, like, what have been some strategies you've tried to employ, if any? We're all just trying to survive at this
yeah.
point, to try to, set more of a firm boundary between work and life. Because I saw this, like, I think it was my boss who sent this to me. It was really funny. It was this article written from the perspective of your daily walk, and
Oh,
your daily walk's like, hi. I know that we have been way too good of friends recently, and like you can't depend on me for everything in your life. Like I'm only your daily walk. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like a funny little article,
yeah.
right? And I'm like, geez, that hit home because I'm taking like 3 walks a day just to feel something. Like that meme where it's like the like
Yeah.
vulture like walking outside, like me on my daily walk. But
Yeah, yeah, just trying to figure it out. I mean, I think especially in the beginning, I was pretty bad at like having that
yeah.
separation because it was just like, you're a newbie, you're like, I want to be on board for everything and like make sure I'm like always present. It kind of takes over your life. I
Hmm.
think these days, like reaching out to friends more, actually like talking to my family more because during the day, like we're all working or like
Hmm.
doing whatever, and I'll be like stuck like all day, like I'm telling all day, doing work, and like stepping out of my room and like leaving my phone like away and just sitting with my fam in the living room or like watching TV, watching whatever
Hmm.
games my dad is watching,
Hmm.
that I think is helping. And something I'd appreciate with like remote working, if the pandemic wasn't around, is like being able to go work with your friends as well, like
Yes.
outside, like not people who work in your firm, but like your actual friends.
Ooh, yeah.
Um, if things like, get better and maybe there's more hybrid kind of configurations at places, you can like spend a day with like your friend working at XYZ company. You guys go to a cafe or go like hang out somewhere and just
Yeah.
do work remotely like that. I think that would be really fun and kind of just change the way we think of work, and maintaining
Ooh,
relationships.
ma'am, I think I was gonna ask you, what do you think about a hybrid model? And
Oh yeah.
hopefully, I think it's likely-ish or like
Yeah.
possible-ish that like I know Spotify is allowing people to go remote fully, permanently.
Oh, whoa. Okay, that's lit.
And so that's cool. But like you said, there's pros and cons to each. And most of the time in life, sort of like trying to stay in the middle and getting that balance is ideal, right? So
Yeah.
what if like you have a staff meeting where everybody's supposed to be there and that's
Yeah.
a day you go into work because it's like nice to just be together and bounce ideas off each other, like
Yeah.
catch up from the remote days. But even yeah, and then like a 2 and 3, 2 remote, 3 in person, or vice
Right?
versa. And then on some of the remote days, working with your friends, like you said,
That sounds
like
so much fun. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but
Mm.
I'm hard pressed to think that we're gonna return to the like exact same reality, right? Because that's not really
Yeah.
how things tend to work.
I mean, yeah, in an ideal world, we would not need to be working 5-day weeks for 8 hours at least a day. Like in my head, I'm like, we honestly need like 3 days, and at three, we're good to go, y'all. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
really don't need to be doing all this. But yeah, we'll see. I do think we might go back to like the old times in a very literal sense of the word, just because like
Yeah.
that feels normal.
Mm,
Um, but we'll see. We'll see.
we'll definitely
Fingers crossed.
see.
But yeah,
Absolutely. Well, that's enough work talk. I feel like we exhausted the work talk, but it was very
yeah,
enlightening for me. I enjoyed it a
yeah.
lot. I enjoy your
No, it's
thoughts.
always fun.
Then the next question I have for you, kind of switching gears a little bit, Chelsea,
Yeah.
switching gears, sort of moving outside of like the work arena and sort of your extracurricular interests,
Yeah.
is like I saw you were very involved in the Asian Students Association
Yes,
at Princeton.
sir.
Is that what it's?
Yeah.
I don't know if I got the name
The
wrong.
Asian American Students Association,
Asian
also known as
Americans,
AASA.
ASA, boom.
Mhm.
Um, I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of wanted to ask you how that started. Again, maybe sort of,
Yeah.
I'd imagine maybe that had some background before Princeton. You didn't just sort of like dive right into it. You may have, I
Mm,
don't know. Not trying to judge, but would just like to hear more about that. And then I have a lot of like, I don't know, really interesting questions that I think you're uniquely suited to providing some awesome perspective to,
yeah.
given that you're plugged into like the Asian American Students Association and your
Yeah.
own background. So yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So that is a question I get in any interview I have. Like, you look at my resume and it's like, yes, I was the vice president of the Asian American Students
It's
Association.
unique. It's
Yes,
unique.
it's very unique. And you were right to say that it kind of starts from way before being on
Hmm.
campus. And I do have to say, it's probably just like this result of the education system in New York, at least, and like
Okay.
how I ended up going to a high school 2 hours away from my neighborhood. Um,
Oh,
and in that, like, I basically ended up getting a scholarship to go to like a really great school in
cool.
Manhattan on the Upper East Side. So that meant I was commuting into a completely new neighborhood and environment, which means I'm not surrounded by people who look like me or have the same
Mm,
experiences as me. And from high school, one of my best friends in the entire world, she is Chinese American,
okay.
named Sam, and we just like we click like this. We talk every day to this day, FaceTime for at
Wow.
least 2 hours, every day.
Wow.
And um, I think from our friendship, you're friends with someone, you want to get to know more about them. Her family took me out to like my first dim sum and like my first hot
Mm,
pot, and like
mm,
they'd hang out with me. She's like learning about me and my family. I bring her to like the cookouts and like barbecues
right.
and
Of
stuff.
course.
And we kind of like mix like that. And so having her be so close, like being so close with her and like learning about her, I was like, wait, if things are happening in the real world that are affecting Asian Americans, that's affecting my friend. Like, I care
Mm,
about that, right? And in the same way,
mm,
like, flip side for me, that's her reaction to things happening to me. So that's kind of where my interest kind of bubbled up. Um,
mm.
I don't know if it's cliche or not, but just literally from my best friend and like having such a strong relationship with her. And so in high school, we didn't have an Asian American Students Association. We had
Right.
like an Asian Awareness Club, which
Okay.
is like very interesting. You talked about more of like we talked a lot about East Asian countries and not really like the the experience in America for Asian people. Those are two different
Mm,
things. And
mm.
so when I went into Princeton and I saw the Asian American Students Association, this was like I was like, oh, I'm actually very interested in like learning more about this. And I wish, especially on college campuses, people went into student organizations with like more of a learning eye than like a I need to like actively be like I need to be affected by whatever issue, or I need to be part of this identity to understand what's going on.
Mm,
And I do think ASA is a great place for having that like sense of like, oh, other people who understand me. But then also like I went into it, obviously I'm not Asian American, but I went into it with like, I want to also understand you, and I could take a back seat and kind of look on with my perspectives and kind of hold those two. So that's
right.
that's kind of where I started, and having like a lot of Asian American friends around me, like I think I'm lucky in that I'm from New York City, a very diverse place, that
Hmm.
I do care about learning about how other people's experiences are,
Yeah.
wherever we are.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how I ended up in ASA. I got elected social chair with Sharon actually,
Sure.
our freshman year, and
Yeah.
then moved on to be the first vice president, the first non-Asian vice president of ASA in
Right.
ASA's history. And we figured this out because technically in the constitution for ASA, non-Asians were not allowed to be on the executive board. And the past board actually figured this out once I became VP, and they were like, oh, we're editing that because obviously like maybe like we've never had the situation before, and like,
Right.
whoa. And I'm like, oh man, we kind of have to change the constitution to let me be allowed to be like on the
Right.
executive board, which was crazy to me. It was hilarious. But kind of like showing that I think those kinds of conversations are needed, and like I'm really happy with my experience being part of ASA.
Right.
Um, and like even to this day, just staying abreast of even the news now, but
Mm,
beyond that, my coursework at Princeton was also reflective of just me trying to learn more about this group's experience here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Chelsie, this is like, and I really mean this, is genuinely fascinating to me. I have so many questions. I'm trying to like organize them here and be logical and coherent, because it's a really interesting thing. And it's a large reason of why I wanted you to come on the pod, because you're awesome and you have so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question would be, in relating to what you just said about, there's actually something in there like credo or whatever saying like non-Asians are not allowed to, be on the executive board. What was it like
Mhm.
for you just navigating the environment once you dove into that? You said it was great and you were learning and everything from a backseat
Yeah.
perspective, but then
Yeah.
obviously you rose to the executive board, right? So you went from
Yeah.
backseat to like getting some leadership. And so could you just speak a little bit more about what that was like? Because clearly people there liked you. I mean, everybody likes you. You're awesome. But
Too
just sort
fast.
of what that's like walking into that experience. And I
Yeah.
think it's rare, Chelsie, because it's like often somebody might be the only Black person in a room full of like a lot of white people. You know what
Right.
I mean? As
Right.
opposed to Black person being in a room of Asian people. And that's less common, I feel. So
Right.
I wanted to just like hear about that experience.
Yeah. I think that's a really great question because the tightrope performance of yes, I am a leader in this organization, but I am definitely not going to be drowning out the voices of the people
Mm,
who make up this organization was really important to me. In that like I cannot speak for Asian Americans, and I can only speak from the perspective of someone learning about the experience.
hmm.
And use whatever knowledge I'm gaining from my peers, from my courses to push agendas that are in line with ASA's like values and also
Mm,
the values of my peers and my friends.
yeah.
And I think me being on the e-board was more showing it was more a force of solidarity rather than me like pushing like saying I speak for
Right.
anyone in the group. And I
Right.
think that that's important too. I know I was definitely like a little odd on Princeton's campus being like that Black girl who was like posting about Asian American representation and stuff. And it is weird, and I acknowledge that.
It's
But I
different. It's
think
not weird. It's different. I don't think
it's
it should be
different.
called weird. You know what I mean? But go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, thank you for that actually.
Yeah.
But it's different, and I definitely there were some times where I was just like, should I not be like more involved in like the Black student organization on
That's what I was going
campus,
to ask you
right?
about. Yeah.
Right. And I think I had a lot to learn from both groups,
Mm,
but I did think like in terms of my role, my interests, you mentioned focus on international relations. I focus on East Asia
yeah.
in international relations, and the relationships I happened to form on campus. With those relationships, I felt like my role on this campus was better served like learning um from this different perspective from mine and like promoting that within other communities, aka the Black community as well. And
Mm,
that's kind of like the niche I felt like I was taking up. I didn't think I would be particularly effective as someone in like the Black student organization. As like I'm Black girl, I support everything that's
right,
going on there, and I know that.
right.
I think though, as a Black person going into AASA, not only was I learning about the Asian American perspective, I could put the Black perspective in people's minds as well. So they're not two echo chambers, right? Like you're having like you
Mm,
can hear like the debate on affirmative action. I'm hearing from Asian Americans like their perspectives on that, knowing
mm.
perspective from the like the Black perspective. That's a different conversation than just like go to the Black Student Union, talk about affirmative action. You go to the Asian American Students Association, talk about affirmative act. Like those are two different things, you know, rather than like conjoining those and like having fruitful conversations and debates. So
Chelsie, I admire this so much because I think what you're touching on is the idea that each of us, I really believe this, is that each of us really, again, we're sort of going back to these like things that are cliche, but I think are cliche for a reason.
yeah,
Like each of us has our own unique gift or gifts or unique roles in life, really. And I think you touched on it, like you identified at this stage of your life what your role and what your gift and what you were going to bring to
yeah,
bridge these two communities.
yeah,
And I think that's not easy. Definitely
no,
not easy, especially given what we're talking about, everything that's going on in the world, and like
oh
how
yeah,
important it is. And I know it must be for you to, be a member of the Black Student Association at Princeton, and just
yeah,
like the Black identity for you.
yeah,
Um, and trying to, like, you didn't cast that aside, but you said, hey, I'm going to try to bridge these two groups and see what we can learn from each other. And I think that's really hard. And I just like really admire that, actually. So I just want to put that out there. I think it's cool.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Right. And so that leads into kind of like my next question for
Mm.
you on this topic is really just like the relationship between Blacks and Asians. And I was doing my research for the
Oh
pod.
yeah.
And just like out of transparency, like my own background is that I feel like I grew up so much more around Black people than Asian people.
Yeah.
Because like basically like my first friend was Black and he was from Nigeria. So I just like spent
Oh,
so much time at his house, like from the jump. And
exactly.
like I still talk to him every day, sort of like your high school friend.
Yeah.
And then we didn't go to the same high school, but my high school was like mainly just white people and Black people. Not all, but it was like far, I think it's like far less Asian people in my high school than even
Yeah.
Black people. So that was interesting for me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have just, and I played a lot of basketball where I was like the only white guy on the team, you know what I mean? So
Right,
I
right,
was
right.
I was in that environment for a long time. And didn't have much like experiences learning from Asian people and just even going to class with Asian people at all. So
Yeah.
um for me, I feel like I know much more about that and have just spent more time there
Yeah.
than I have with the Asian culture.
Yeah.
And now I'm dating Sarah, who's Asian. And so
Yeah, yeah, look at that.
it's been really cool to just like learn about her experiences. I was talking with her dad about his experiences growing up in
Yeah.
China and everything. I'm on a rant. I promise. I'm
No,
going
no,
to
no,
my
no, no, no,
question.
no. I like hearing about this.
Um, and so, right. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I feel like I've spent way more time in like the Black community than the Asian community.
Mhm.
But, and for that reason, I was trying to do some research about this like idea of racial triangulation, I think it's called.
Ah, yes, yes.
And, you know, I personally hesitate of like getting super academic about things like this and like all this intellectual stuff.
Yep.
But again, like we said, I think living in the middle of the two ways is often, the best. And you don't have to be completely non-academic about this stuff, but because the academic side can give you a lot of like framework for a way to think
Yeah.
about the world. And so basically for the listeners, racial triangulation is this idea that there's basically like two axes. So
Mhm.
like superior and inferior on, think of that on like the y axis, and then outsider and insider.
Mhm.
And I think it was like white people as the insider and then superior. And this is in our society and like the way we value that. And
Yeah.
then Black people as insider and inferior. And
Yeah.
then Asian people in like the middle of superior and inferior. And that's sort of like the model minority myth idea. And then they're
Yeah.
viewed as outsiders. So it's like a triangle,
Yeah.
like white people top right, Black
Mhm.
people bottom right, and then
Bottom.
Asian people in the middle, right? So it brings a triangle.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
long-winded, but I just wanted to like bring that out and sort of bring that up because, like you said, especially everything going on right now with like Stop Asian Hate after the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, this is super open-ended and I feel like we barely have any time left. I'm kind of sick about it right now. So I want to keep talking. We'll see if we can edit it later or whatever. But
Yeah.
wanted to just get your perspective on that idea and just the interrelations between white people, Black people, and Asian people.
Yeah.
And I just thought for me, it was super interesting to see it plotted out in that way,
Yeah.
where the Asian American experience being looked on as outsiders and Black, but being in that middle, but Black people being insiders and being like viewed
Right.
as more inferior, right? So it's not like that straight up caste system, but it's like
Right.
triangulated.
Right.
So I don't know. I just wanted to like give my thoughts out after reading. I was doing a lot of reading on that, and yeah, just wanted to
Wow.
hear your perspective.
Oh, Mike, you explained that so well.
I don't know if I did,
Look at
but
you. No, you did. That was really great. The relationship, I think I'll start off between Black people and Asian people is
yes.
very, I'm still learning about it. In my
Mm,
last semester on campus, I was taking this class remotely called Black and Asian in America. And that was like my first time really seeing, like, rather than learning about the Asian American experience and learning about the Black American experience, learning about how these two experiences coincided. And obviously we talked about racial triangulation.
okay.
And the course kind of began and kind of centered on the LA riots. I'm not sure if you know.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, but after
You
the
can explain it
Rodney
for the
King,
listeners if you want, if
yeah,
just briefly.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, in California, this was in the 90s, around 1992. In LA, there were these riots that kind of sprung up from a lot of like racial tension building up from the beating of a Black man named Rodney King by police, and also there was also the shooting of a Black girl named Latasha Harlins by a Korean shop owner.
Mm,
Um, I forgot her name. Sundan, I can't remember her name, but all these racial tensions kind of blowing up, and you get the LA riots, which was just like the devastation of a lot of businesses and companies in LA. And it was a primarily Black and Asian conflict with kind of white people in the periphery.
yep.
And I think that kind of set the base of like what our relations look like today.
Mhm.
I guess I should also like kind of preface this with saying that we do not in America, unless you seek it out, we don't have a very clear um, or like people are not always taught about the Asian American aspect of events going on. Like honestly,
Mhm.
until college, I didn't really know when Asian people came to America or like where
Straight up,
they're,
and I
yeah,
straight up, I didn't know. Yeah.
like it's like where are they in this white and Black conversation? Because
Yes.
if when you're in high school, you're learning about US history, it's very white and Black. You're not thinking
Yes.
about the Native Americans, not thinking about people like Latin Americans, you're not thinking about Asian Americans. So it's
Mhm.
already very difficult to figure out like historically why are we in this place that we are? Where
Mhm.
did people come in? So that's something that I think is one of the biggest problems for why people don't understand this tension between Black and Asian people. Um, and there are a lot of things at hand that I don't think I took a whole course on this and I still don't
Right.
know enough, so I think it's hard
Right.
to explain. But actually living in the neighborhood I live in Queens, I live in a very Caribbean neighborhood. A
Okay.
lot of the shops that we have nail salons, we have cleaners and things like that. They're Asian owned.
Mhm.
Um, and that causes a tension, at least with like I have my sister who lives here, and she has a very different perspective on Asians like in our neighborhood than I do. I
Mm.
kind of understand like why in our neighborhood there are Asian people who don't live in this neighborhood who have businesses here
Okay.
versus like my sister who's just like why are they here,
Right.
why
Right.
are these Asian families here, and there's a history behind that you're just not going to learn unless you
Mhm.
seek it out. um and yeah, I guess this is all long-winded to say that like the tensions that we're seeing now with Stop Asian Hate, a lot of the I think transgressions that we're seeing, you're seeing a lot of Black on Asian like hate crimes as well as like white on
Right.
Asian.
Right.
But there's a lot of like the Black on Asian. And the conversations have kind of spun, at least the things that I've seen in Instagram discourse and comments, which are, ooh,
Oh, that's it.
that's trash.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like why it becomes a contest of like, where were you supporting me? Where were you supporting me? Back and forth.
Mm.
Like this is why Black people shouldn't support Asian people. If like there's like, you know, racism in
Mm,
that direction, this is why Asian people shouldn't support Black people. Look at them like hurting our elders, blah, blah, blah. That kind of discourse happens. And I think it's hard if you're not pulled back from it, looking at it from our academic lens, which is kind of
right.
unfortunate because I understand what you're saying. Like, I agree with you. The academic lens is also a little bit of a, it's denying the reality of the feelings that people are feeling in
Yeah.
the moment, and you can't do that and have a like an open-ended conversation about this.
Right.
I think it just sucks because I'm definitely one of those people that's like, no, the man, there's the system and there's the man, like we need to work together. Like, no, don't. But you
Yeah.
can't deny people's actual lived experiences and like their interactions with like either Black people or Asian people,
Right.
and then tell everyone like, no, no, ignore all of that.
Yeah.
Ignore anti-Blackness in the Asian community and ignore like um Asian like discrimination and prejudice in the Black community. Let's just all come together. Kumbaya, you know, like no,
Right.
that's not gonna happen. Um, so I have no answers, but I think that is where my mind goes to. It's just like there's a lot of like tension, and we're trying to do many things at the same time,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of root things that need to happen. There is
Yeah.
anti-Blackness in the Asian community, but we still need support among the minorities, among Asians and Black people to kind of overcome a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And Black people also do have a lot of prejudice, like against Asian people as
Yeah.
well. We need to overcome that as well as work together with Asian people. So there are
Mm,
multiple like levels of like there's a lot that needs to be fixed, but we need your support now. Like how do we address everything at once? Is it possible to? Do
right.
we can't ignore things, but
Right.
is something a little more important now than like
Right.
then? And I don't know. I
Right.
this is hard. And I think I was in a pretty interesting position after like last summer with like the
Hmm.
George Floyd riots. That was really hard for me, just because I am surrounded by a lot of Asian American friends, and I realized like I didn't feel like I had a lot of like Black friends to turn to and talk about my
Mm,
experience, but my Asian American friends obviously were giving me support in a different way that I needed. But I
yeah.
also needed like another level of support that wasn't
Right.
there. And now I'm kind of feeling how the roles are reversed because you know we don't really talk about Asian violence until like pandemic, like the anti Chinese sentiment that's kind of been perpetuated. Now
Yeah.
I'm in a position like after these shootings, I'm like, I need to check in on my friends. Am I doing it
Mm,
in an effective way? Like I've kind of taken on that role. It's a new experience and learning for me, you know, like
mm,
now I need to figure out how to give like the right support in this time to my friends as they did to
mm.
me. Um, so we'll see. These are battles that we're still fighting. So
Their battles are still fighting, and like you said, as always, it's so multifaceted, so multifactorial, so many
yeah.
different layers. It's hard, it's messy, it's complicated.
Yep.
Um, I really appreciated your answer, just like learning from your perspective. And I think one of the things that hit me that you were talking about was one of the things I was reading about in that racial triangulation paper,
Mhm.
um, which is just like moving beyond white and black, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this model is doing, is like putting in the triangulated, spatial manner,
Yep.
and sort of like just seeing that there were other elements to this. And I
Yeah.
think um, one of the saddest parts for me kind of reading about it, and this is just one perspective from the research article, but it
Yeah.
seems to like ring very true with me, and I'm obviously going to keep reading about it, was just the idea of like, so like white people, it was called like relative valorization. So
Oh yeah.
right, like, so white people are relatively, I think the verb would be valorizing Asian people in respect to black people, right? But with the model minority myth,
Yeah.
um, saying like Asian people are way more hardworking than black people and like all that stuff. And so that they're doing that, but at the same time, like because they're making it internal and about their internal attributes and making it about like their genetics or like all that language that was
Yeah.
extremely explicit back then is more implicit now. But in the process of doing that, they're also this thing they called it like civic ostracism. So
Yeah.
ostracizing Asian people from, like we talked about, from the history classes and
Mhm.
literally from being able to be a citizen and be able to vote for so long
Yeah.
in the 1800s and
Politics.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Right. And so making the Asian person apolitical, right?
Yep.
And bringing
Yep.
them out of the conversation. So I thought you touched on that. And um, I think it's just kind of like, it was really hard to read it, and it was not, I don't know. It was just tough to read, right? Because it was, like you said, in the Rodney King riots, and then I think this was called Flatbush boycott of 1990, when
Oh,
there
with the
was,
nail salons?
yeah, I think, yeah, something like that, or a store. I think some like two black individuals like boycotted a Korean-owned store, right? And then the black mayor was like basically pressured in by the white media. This is in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
basically like pressured into like going to like go to the store. And basically, I think what I'm trying to say is that there's just been a lot of this, like you said, institutional from the man antagonism between the two minority groups, right? And so
Yeah.
just, I definitely didn't explain that well, but just kind of reading about that, reflecting on that, has me thinking about like, how can we move beyond this dichotomy? Even, and we don't even have that dichotomy like anywhere near like
Yeah, like
figured out of how we're
fleshed
gonna
out at all. Yeah.
coexist and whatnot. But I don't know. I hope conversations like this are like what it's about and what we can do to drive it forward. And I guess like my question would be like, what can I do as a white male myself?
Mhm.
And then what can white people do in general in order to, I don't know what the word is to encapsulate it all, but just move us forward together, basically,
Yeah.
right? Like, what can we do?
Yeah. That's a good question because I'm also trying to figure out like what can I do as well.
Yeah.
Um, I think from a top-down approach, just like if you have people who are more well connected, or if you yourself, you might become a doctor, you going forward, continue to educate yourself in the way that you are, because that is amazing. And not a lot of people, I think, go out of their way to educate
Mm,
themselves the way that you're doing right now. That I think is the most important in living, like either like you as a doctor, for example, like the kind of care that you eventually give to your patients, keeping in mind like what kinds of biases and prejudices you might have that might prevent you from giving the best quality care to
mm,
whoever your patients are based on whatever, or taking into consideration the multifaceted backgrounds of your patients, whether they're Black, Asian, Latino, Native American, like thinking about like how can all these things impact the health of my patient. That's just one
mm.
example or one facet in like a more healthcare related aspect
Right.
of the kind of work you can do. I think generally though, like people just I think nowadays, this is a whole nother conversation for a different podcast, but like polarization and kind of like this idea that like everyone has to be in their own camps and you are dying on every hill, like this is
Mm,
the hill you need to die on. The internet, I don't think is the best place to have these kinds of conversations of like really delving into how messy everything is.
right.
It's a good place to know where the goalposts are, like one end of extreme and the other,
Uh-huh.
but definitely not for the middle, right? So I think going out of your way to like actually talk to people, humanize these issues, is the only thing I have right now.
Yeah.
And voting, and anything you can do, giving a platform to people around you who need it the most.
Right.
I think is everything I can think of and everything I've done so far as like the VP of the Asian American Students Association and a continued ally to all my friends. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And I'm definitely gonna do my absolute best as a doctor to, as you
yeah,
said, just look into those socio-cultural determinants of health. Not just
yeah.
look
Oh, that's what
into
they're
it,
called.
right, but just like really practice that and make that a huge part of me.
Yeah,
And then to the second thing you said, right, obviously educating yourself, doing the reading, but also like I talk about this with my friends all the time, like playing sports and just like
yeah,
being like having somebody on your team who doesn't look like you know what I mean? And like
yeah,
having that experience of working towards a common goal with them. Like, I'm not even saying like everybody has to be on the certain side of the political aisle after you
yeah,
have that experience, but it's just about like having that experience in general.
yeah,
And like we need obviously different perspectives, but I think at the end of the day, we also need people to recognize the humanity in one another. And like
yeah.
doing the educational, intellectual stuff is great, but also just like
Definitely.
going out there, like play some intramural soccer with somebody who doesn't look
Yeah,
like you. You know what I mean? Like do stuff
yeah.
like that. I'm a believer in sports, hoping that
I
can bring
love
us
that.
together. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
it's definitely tough things going on. But I have hope that we can move forward.
I
Um,
know.
Chelsea, that was fascinating. So much more I want to ask you there, but I'm also trying to keep this,
Yeah,
within our
no.
time slot.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I gotcha.
Dude, I'm trying to get better at this, but I'm a
No,
podcast
you are
novice. I
killing
don't know what
it.
I'm
You're
doing.
killing it. I'm so
Oh, thank
excited to
you.
see how you're gonna grow with this ML.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. So I like to kind of have a bit of a formula here with these podcasts, which is like at the end, I just like to ask you, we talked about work, we talked about this like huge extracurricular passion of yours, but then I saw you're also in like dance groups at Princeton, which is a huge deal. I don't
Yeah,
know if people know like how much commitment goes into that, but
yeah.
is dancing still something that you're really enjoying, especially, excuse me,
Mm,
especially in the pandemic? And like, if not, what's something else you're enjoying or just like
yeah.
trying to like have some fun with, not necessarily be
Yeah.
great at, but just have some fun with?
Oh, I love that you said that because I am having fun with figuring out how to do that right now,
Right,
actually.
right,
That's how I felt about dancing as well. I definitely don't dance as much as I used to, but dancing in my family has now been learning TikToks from my younger sisters,
right.
and doing those or just having little dance parties with the fam. So that's the extent of dance there.
Love it.
Um, I like learned how to knit terribly. I knit my mom a scarf and she loves it even though it was terrible. And I really appreciate her for that. Um, am I doing what else am I doing with my life? I watch a lot of I feel like I'm watching more TV, watching more YouTube
Of course,
videos.
of course.
And I've been keeping up. Mentioned IR major. I started learning Korean in college, and so I've been trying to keep up with that. I speak
Mhm.
terribly, but
Korean's
that's
hard, I've heard. I heard it's
it's
hard.
so difficult.
Okay.
But that's something I've just been like keeping up with, and just trying to get better at. But also, I don't got to be perfect.
Mhm.
And yeah, those are the kinds of things I'm still I think trying to find new things that to just try out and accept the fact that like I don't have to be perfect at them. So I'm glad you said it like that. Like things
Yeah.
we're just doing, just to do.
And trust me, I'm saying that because I understand the struggle of like wanting to be amazing at everything I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like instead of just like do it, I'm trying to work on that as well.
Yeah.
But I love the knitting. I like kind of embarrassing, but I don't care. I'm about to like basically so I was very into Pokemon as a kid,
Oh, okay.
hugely
Yeah.
into Pokemon. Tried to get back into it in the pandemic, had one of those like sad boy moments where I was like, oh my God, I'm so old now. And
Yeah.
it doesn't hit the same way it used to, but I'm still like into Pokemon and
Yeah.
like the nostalgia and all that. So I'm about to make this like diorama cube. Like this is like the most nerdy thing ever, but it's along the lines of like working with your hands and it's
Just do
fun, like
something.
knitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the diorama cube will have like a moment from one of the Pokemon games. And like when you choose your starter and everything, like you make it
Oh,
3D
I
and
see.
everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, so I found it on YouTube the other day. I was like, yes. So I ordered like the little cubes and like a like
Oh
safety
my God.
pin and like all these things that
I'm
I need.
so
So
hyped. I'm
yeah.
I'm waiting for like a post about this once you're done
Oh
with the
yeah.
project.
I will send that to you. But I think there's something fun about making things with your hands. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a hobby. So keep up the knitting. It's pretty
Yeah,
sick.
I know. Gotta get back into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Chelsea, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly, every pod I feel like becomes more and more fun for me, and this has been really awesome
Yeah.
because you're an amazing guest. And so, thank you so much for coming on. Can't wait to have you
Yeah.
back soon.
I hope.
And
Yeah.
keep crushing it, Chelsea.
Yes, you too, ML. Good luck with this. Everyone listening, Mike is the best. So you have to keep following this.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you. All right, we out.
Yeah, this was
Peace.
fun. Bye.